Well, hello, and welcome to Lecture Series 6. In this series, we're going to talk about sleep and consciousness. And in this first mini lecture, we're going to focus on consciousness. Consciousness is defined as being aware of your internal and external experiences. So are you aware of what you're feeling inside? Are you aware of the feel of the chair against your skin? Are you aware of the weather outside or the fires? That's consciousness. We typically set the threshold for consciousness at wakefulness. And when you're awake, you are aware of what's going on around you. Generally, but it's not an all or nothing. It's not an all or nothing situation, is it? Even when we are conscious, how much awareness we have varies. Some of that has to do with research on attention. And the idea here is if I'm paying attention to one thing, if I'm consciously aware of one thing, then I probably am less aware of the things going on around me. So we've all unfortunately seen people who are on their cell phones, either texting or talking while they're driving. They're paying attention to the conversation, and as a result, they have less attention or conscious awareness of what's going on around them, like the other cars. So people who are on their cell phones while they're driving have no idea how poorly they're driving. It's amazing, but true. Most of the processes that are controlled by our brains and body occur unconsciously. I'm not consciously aware of what my body does to allow me to breathe. I'm not consciously aware of the processes that pump the blood in my body, for example. We typically compare wakefulness to altered states of consciousness. And there's a million reasons for someone to be in an altered state of consciousness. They might be asleep, right? They might have a mental illness like Alzheimer's disease or dementia. They might be using a psychoactive drug or medication. But wakefulness doesn't mean we're consciously aware of everything. And I've got two examples on the bottom of this slide. The first one is an old logo from the company FedEx. You've probably seen this logo a million times. But have you ever noticed the arrow, the big white arrow that's in the middle of their logo? No? Take a look. I also want to show you an interesting study. I'm not going to tell you too much about it. It relates to consciousness, but let's take a pause here so you can watch this video and then I'll come back.
This is a test of selective attention. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the basketball. How many passes did you count? The correct answer is 15 passes. But did you see the gorilla? This video is from research by Daniel Simons and Christopher Chabris and is copyrighted.
Did you like that illusion? A little over half of people don't notice the gorilla. If you did, then try showing that video to somebody in your home or a friend and see if they notice. I've got the website here, so you can go and look at that video and other videos that show that we are not aware of as much of our world as we think we are. Our consciousness, our awareness, fluctuates normally throughout the day. In fact, a lot of variables fluctuate all day long. That's called our circadian rhythm. It's a clock. It's not exactly 24 hours, but it's close to it, where that describes how various cognitive functions like attention, but also muscle strength and reaction time and blood pressure, all these things vary with the time of day. This is called circadian rhythm. And part of that variation is that you feel sleepy during certain parts of the day, typically at night, right? Each person has their own clock, so people who are morning people are very alert. They have a clock where maybe their awareness of the world is really high in the morning. And night owls have their peak moments at different times of the day. But that's the circadian rhythm. Altered states of consciousness. There are many different ways to alter your state of consciousness. In our previous lecture, we talked about psychoactive drugs, and that's certainly one avenue. Meditation is another. Even deep breathing can alter your state of awareness. Okay, types of consciousness. So we have the wakeful state, and we know that sleeping is different. But what about other states? Well, I've got a graph here that plots different types of consciousness along two axes. The vertical axis is awareness. How are you? Yeah, awareness. And the horizontal line is vigilance. Can you move your eyes? Can you track the thing? And you can see here where sleep is. So we've got light sleep and drowsiness and slow wave sleep. We'll talk about a little later. But I want to show you some other points in this graph which demonstrate different types of consciousness. So locked-in syndrome is a phenomenon where people are paralyzed, but their brain is completely functional. So they're perfectly aware of what's going on. They can communicate, but they can't move their bodies. Someone who is in a coma has the lowest level of conscious awareness. In fact, they're completely unconscious, they're unable to move, and even their pupils do not respond to light. A vegetative state is different from a coma. In a vegetative state, someone is unconscious, but they can move. They might make reflexive movements, their pupils will increase with light. They might unconsciously scratch themselves. Vegetative states are really tough because loved ones see the movement as indication that the person is still there. But if you can see from this graph, the awareness is not there. Dementia, you may have heard of Alzheimer's disease. We'll talk about dementia a little later when we get to the lectures on memory. But one of the things that happens with people in dementia is they sort of zone out. They're there, they're alert, but they're not very aware. Their level of consciousness, they're not aware of what's going on around them or even what's going on inside of them sometimes. Here is 4 pictures. They're brain imaging. These are PET scans of people in different states of consciousness. In the upper left-hand corner is the typical awake person, and the different colors in the PET scan indicate brain activity. Brighter colors mean more activity. So you can see there's activity all over the brain. If we go just below that to locked-in syndrome, again, you see activity all over the brain. So in locked-in syndrome, again, the body can't move, but the brain is fine. Right? Someone's in a vegetative state. That's a picture in the upper right-hand corner. You see very, very little brain activity. Okay, and corresponding to that, there's very little consciousness. Okay, that's all I'm going to tell you about consciousness today. Come right back and we'll start talking about sleep.